Hey you guys, it's Diane, and tonight we are going to discuss soy consumption and soy exposures, and we're going to try to determine how many times in a 24-hour period you could possibly be exposing yourself to soy without even realizing it. So if you're just joining me, my name is Dyann Parham, and I help women create meal plans and fitness programs to suit their lifestyle so they can look and feel their best and live their most authentic life. So yesterday I talked about an accidental soy exposure that I had last week that left me feeling very fatigued, was really affecting my morning runs, was making me feel very sleepless at night, and just overall not making me feel good. I know from some of the food situations that I've had and some of the elimination diets that I've done and some of just major like health issues that I've had over the past couple of years, that soy is definitely one of those things that has become a trigger food for me. It hasn't always been that way, but in the last couple of years it has definitely been that thing that causes my body to just be kind of out of balance and just generally not feel well. So what I'm going to do is go through a very typical healthy eater kind of day and list off some foods that a lot of people eat in the course of a day without realizing that those food items actually have soy in them. So we're going to count up how many possible times in a 24-hour period when you're eating healthy and you might be actually exposing yourself to soy or soy lecithin. So I listed yesterday a couple of very common food items that actually have soy in them. And remember, soy is one of those things that's just used as a filler. Hey, Holly, good to see you. It's used as a filler and a binding agent in food. So any processed food is going to have probably soy lecithin in it or some sort of soy byproduct in it to just kind of bind it and hold it together. So I think you're going to be a little surprised at some of the everyday foods that actually have soy in them. So I'm going to kind of go through a typical eating day for me when I was not aware of the food that I was eating that had soy in it, and it was very healthy food. So I would start my day with a multivitamin that actually had soy lecithin in it. So that would be my very first exposure. And then I would have my breakfast, and I would use a non-stick cooking spray in my pan to cook my egg whites, and the cooking spray had soy lecithin in it, so that's 2. And then I would have turkey bacon with some egg whites, and I would have a gluten-free, dairy-free waffle on the side. So the bacon I had also had soy lecithin in it, and so did my gluten-free, dairy-free waffle. So just at breakfast, I've already had 4 exposures to soy lecithin. Then I go into my sort of my pre-workout mode. So I've had breakfast, I'm getting ready to work out, and I used to consume an amino acid that had energy in it for my pre-workout, and that supplement also had soy lecithin in it. So there would be 5 exposures to soy, and I haven't even worked out yet. Then I would work out, and then I would have my Shakeology, and thankfully Shakeology does not have soy in it, so that was one of the meals that I had that was safe. And then I would kind of go about my day and have a little snack. So my snack typically would be like maybe some gluten-free crackers or something, and maybe a slice of cheese and an apple. So the cheese that I was consuming had soy in it, and so did the gluten-free crackers that I was eating. So there's 2 more exposures to soy. So I'm already at 7, and I haven't even had my lunch yet. Moving on to lunch, a very typical lunch that I would have when I'm really conscious about eating healthy and following a food plan. I would have tuna fish, and I would put a little bit of mayonnaise in it, and then I usually add in some like apples and celery and sunflower seeds or something like that. And so my tuna fish had soy in it, so there's another exposure, and so did the mayonnaise that I was using. So I just added another soy exposure to my day, and I'm at lunch. So now I'm at 9 exposures to soy, and I just finished my lunch. moving on into the afternoon, I might have some peanut butter, possibly some more crackers, or maybe just walk by the pantry and grab a cookie out of the cupboard. So one of my favorite cookies to have was a vegan cookie that I found at Trader Joe's, and that also had soy lecithin in it. And I would usually have 2, and they were trail mix cookies, so definitely something that would be healthy, and it was vegan, so I had no idea that there was something in there that was gonna make me sick. So 2 more exposures with 2 vegan cookies from Trader Joe's. Then we have dinner. So for dinner, I would typically make like a spaghetti squash or something because I was watching the gluten that I was taking in. And I would have some tomato sauce and some probably ground turkey on my spaghetti squash with maybe a little bit of Parmesan cheese. So my spaghetti sauce also had soy lecithin in it, so there's another exposure. And the ground turkey was usually safe, and then of course my spaghetti squash is just a vegetable, so I was safe there. And depending on what kind of Parmesan cheese that I would get, some had soy in it and some didn't, but in this situation I didn't have any soy, so I was safe there. So just 1 exposure at dinner with my spaghetti sauce. Then it's evening time, kids are in bed, my husband and I are sitting on the couch, and I decide to make myself a cup of tea and have a little piece of like chocolate or something. One chocolate that I would typically eat at night with tea would be like a York peppermint patty, because there was no gluten in it and there was no dairy in it. So that was considered a very safe little treat for me to have at the end of the night with a cup of tea. Well, my cup of tea, the tea bag also had soy lecithin in it, so there's an exposure there. And my York peppermint patty, because it had chocolate, also had some soy in it. So that's a complete healthy eating day for me. And in that 24-hour time period, I had 14 exposures to soy. Now, can you imagine doing that day in and day out without even realizing that you're having that many exposures to something that in our country is probably one of the most highly GMO'd food out there. And then when you add in the soy lecithin, I think it even becomes even more processed, so it becomes even more dangerous for our systems. Most people don't realize how bad soy is affecting their body until they're sick, or they do some sort of elimination diet so that they take all the soy out of their life and then slowly start adding food back in. That was the case for me in both of those situations. Not only was I getting sick, but I also knew enough to sort of eliminate everything from my diet and start putting it back in. And as I started putting food back in, I realized I wasn't feeling well and I was having all those soy exposure symptoms, and I was able to easily start eliminating things. The best thing that you can do if you are not feeling normal or you're not feeling your best is to really get good at reading your food labels. There are so many what we consider healthy foods out there that have the additive soy lecithin in it to just make the food last longer or bind together with other ingredients. And that is the thing that I think is the scariest for us, especially as women, because it is in our healthy food. I would have never imagined that a can of tuna fish could be something that would make me sick from a soy exposure. Now, are all foods laced with soy? Absolutely not, but it does take a little bit of time to go through foods and figure out which ones are and which ones aren't, and it is basically a trial and error. I have spent the last 2 years sort of researching these foods and work with the women that I work with in my challenge groups to kind of help you eliminate those everyday foods that could possibly making you sick without you even realizing it. Another thing you want to consider if you are noticing that you are having some of the very typical autoimmune type of things going on with your body. So if you go to the doctor and they start looking around and wanting to test you for things like Hashimoto's disease or hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism, or you're having issues with possibly losing weight, so you're picking up weight and you can't get rid of it. No matter how hard you're working out or how clean you think you're eating and you're just frustrated with your inability to lose weight, it could be as simple as a soy intolerance issue that your body's having. Some things to also consider about soy and this type of exposure 14 times in one day. If your kids are also eating these foods that are in your house, there's a huge increase with our kids entering into puberty at such an early age, so much earlier than we did ourselves. And a huge part of this is this soy epidemic that we have in our country and all the food that we have readily available to us that have soy ingredients in them. So not only do we owe ourselves the due diligence for us as women, but we also owe it to our family to make sure that we aren't putting our sons and daughters and even husbands, men are being affected by this as well, in that position where they could also be having some issues with their hormones and not realizing that it could be just the everyday food that we have in our house. And I know when I was going through some infertility issues when we were trying to get pregnant with my daughter Gabby, and I was about 39, I eliminated all of these foods at that point as well. And after about 3 or 4 months of all of this soy being out of my system, we were able to reverse our infertility problems and go on to have obviously a very healthy pregnancy and a very healthy child at the age of 40. So it is a pretty serious situation that I think sometimes just because of the way our food industry is and the way society is, that we don't really take it as seriously as we should. There's no need for us to go without the foods that we enjoy. I still eat tuna fish, I still have mayonnaise, and I eat chocolate probably almost every day. I have just found foods that do not contain soy so that I can easily substitute them in and take out the foods that were making me sick. So if you're interested in the list of foods that I have, you can go ahead and leave a comment below. You can leave me your email address. I will get you kind of a comprised list of the foods that I now shop for. I find them in my grocery store. I can get them. You can get them at Sprouts. You can get them at Trader Joe's. You can get them at pretty much any grocery store. It's just basically choosing one brand over another and getting really good at reading those food ingredient labels so that you know what is in the food that you're preparing, not only for yourself, but for your family. So I hope this little exercise was helpful to you. I had no idea at the time that I was slowly, sort of poisoning my body with all the times within a day that I was exposing myself to soy. And I think the one that really, really got to me was the fact that even chewing gum has soy in it. So you got to be really careful about what it is you're putting in your body and read every single label down to your chewing gum because it's in there as well. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight, you guys. I always appreciate you being here for me. If you would like to have a list of some of the foods that I've switched over to, again, just go ahead and leave your email down below, or you can private message me and I will kind of get you a list so you can get started with cleaning out your cupboard of food that might be possibly making you sick and slowly transitioning into some food that will help you feel better. You guys have a great night and we'll be in touch.